What is good? Osiris here, stuck in the middle, and I was able to formulate a response finally to a tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene. The tweet made me think deeper about what's happening in our country and what we need to do, in my opinion, if we want peace. And I talk about we've got to have peace, but here's what I mean by that. This is on a topic that's not YouTube friendly. So I'll put a link to the tweet in the comments and description. I'm not going to do it on locals because the topic isn't really even that important to the discussion. My discussion here, my theory here, my thesis here is that you look at someone like AOC and you can say either she's manipulating, critical theory that has a Marxist foundation. Either she's manipulating that for power or she's fallen victim to it. There are a lot of common people that in our country that have, in my opinion, fallen victim to this critical theory. It's not just people on the left. The response to people who believe in critical theory can make you fall victim to the whole point of Marxism. Marjorie Taylor Greene, my thesis is Marjorie Taylor Greene showed why many of us, including myself, James Lindsay, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, many people who are on the populist right or anti-establishment are falling victim to the same ideology that they try to preach against. Marjorie Taylor Greene was very disrespectful in this conversation. If you're able to look at this tweet, the conversation is about critical gender theory. So let's take it to critical theory, just like critical race theory. Her response to it was very aggressive and, in my opinion, hurtful, and an attempt to hurt, and an attempt to trigger people who believe in critical theory. That's not a good approach. That's the approach that Marxists would want. Let me take a step back and then I'll come to my conclusion. The purpose of Marxism is to create chaos and violence.
Okay, so Marxism, the first thing you have to understand about Marxism, Marx did not give a shit about anything he talked about. And you might think that that's ridiculous. No, the only thing Marx cared about was tearing down the society that he hated, the society that he resented, because maybe he wasn't elite enough or he wasn't respected enough or whatever. Maybe he's just a Satanist. I mean, he actually said he was. So, and Satanist can be interpreted quite literally, that he wanted to tear down God or reject God or whatever. It can also, in a kind of a theological, literal sense, it can also be interpreted as hating the order of the world in kind of a Petersonian, religious metaphor sense.
People look at it and think about communism or socialism. And they really think about communism because you're thinking about the economic ramifications of Marxism. It was just the tool he used at the time. He could have used anything else. The best tool at that time for him to use in all these different for him to use and for it to be adopted in different parts of the world, it wasn't always race. We have a fracture in our country of bad race relations going back years. So for our country to bring it down with Marxism, race is the perfect one. Then you can use gender and other things. But it's just whatever it does that creates chaos and violence. Marxist was an elitist who was a very sick person, in my opinion, mental issues, who created a philosophy built off of manipulating people into a mental disease. And his goal was to tear apart society. The Communist Manifesto with Friedrich Engels was not very long. It's a short manifesto. This isn't complicated. He wanted to destroy the status quo. He did not care about the common person. He was not a populist. He was a destructionist. We have to understand that. So what Karl Marx would want for America, if he were alive, is to destroy it. So my reply to here's my takeaway. I do not subscribe to critical gender theory. So I'm not necessarily coming here saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene is off base. What I'm saying is if she comes to the conversation disrespectfully, she's playing into the whole purpose of critical theory, which is to create chaos and destruction and revolutionary violence. So her approach is bringing us closer to that, not further away. So her and I, we part ways there because her approach is not taking us where I want us to be. I know it's a dream. I know it's unlikely, but I want a peaceful divorce, and coming out and doing the things that she did in that tweet are not the way to get there. She is a victim of Marxism. Karl Marx used this philosophy to create two sides, two armies that end up fighting each other to the point where the reason why he wanted that is he didn't care who died or whatever. The peasants were pawns to him. He wanted the conflict to bring down the status quo and to destroy basically the structure of capitalism and the idea of liberty. In my opinion, Karl Marx felt that was the only way to destroy the status quo, was to create civil conflict. It didn't matter if it was government versus people or people versus people, whatever it was, to create war. Engels felt the same way, to create war to bring us down.
Now here's Engels a year later, 1849, talking about the next world war, kind of longing for it to occur, and here's what he has to say about it. Quote, "The next world war will result in the disappearance from the face of the earth, not only of reactionary classes and dynasties, but also of entire reactionary peoples. And that too is a step forward." Unquote. Now, those are the founding fathers of Marxism. It seems quite clear that they see violence and terror, the disappearance from the face of the earth of whole peoples, as built into what they are talking about.
It's easy to be disrespectful to people to the point where there's no return. We can't save it. That's where we are now with Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's no saving that. She's not apologizing for that or her approach, not the content, but her approach. It's harder to take the Martin Luther King Jr. approach, which is to maintain a common thread, or the Frederick Douglass approach, which is to hold up to the Constitution to say, I have no beef with you, but we have to fit it within the document that we have. Respectfully, let's have this discussion. If Karl Marx was alive and saw the Martin Luther King approach out of someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying, Ilhan Omar, or people who believe in critical theory, I am not your enemy. I don't believe in what you believe in. How can we have this discussion where it's productive? We live in the same country. What's our common? We have a common thread. Let's keep that together and work through this moment. That's not what she's doing. If Karl Marx was alive and saw people doing that, he would hate it. Even though people are believing in his basic philosophy, he would hate people trying to keep a common ground together. If he saw Marjorie Taylor Greene attacking people personally, disrespectfully with critical theory, he would love that. Because it leads us down the path of destruction. We can turn that around if we let people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, James Lindsay, and others know that I'm on your side. I'm not against you, but the approach matters. I want you to do it with class, with grace, and always remembering the common bond that we have. That's how we got to do this. Let me know what you think. That's just my take on it. I finally formulated my thought that I know leftists are aggressive and very, very, they're very, very dangerous right now. And it's natural to respond to that with an equal and opposite aggression. But that's not that is the whole point of critical theory. You're letting critical theory win at that point. Let me know what you think. Thanks a lot for listening. Take care.